My name is Sarah, 26, and I just moved back in with my parents after finishing grad school with a brand new job as a software developer. I thought living at home would help me save money, but I was shocked when they demanded $1,800 in rent per month, while my sister Jessica lived completely rent-free. What hurt more than the money was the blatant favoritism. Before I tell you how my parents tried to control my life through money, let me know where you are watching from and hit that subscribe button if you have ever faced family financial favoritism. I grew up in a comfortable upper middle class home in the suburbs of Seattle. Our two-story colonial-style house with its manicured lawn and three-car garage screamed success, which was exactly the image my parents wanted to project. My father James worked as an investment banker, always dressed in tailored suits and obsessed with appearances. My mother Linda was a successful real estate agent who spent more time staging other people's homes than making ours feel warm. From an early age, I understood that in our family, success wasn't just encouraged, it was expected, at least for me. The rules were different for my younger sister Jessica. While I had to maintain straight A's, participate in college resume building extracurriculars, and work summer jobs, Jessica was allowed to explore her artistic side with no pressure to excel academically or financially. I remember when I was 16 and Jessica was 13. I had just won a regional science competition, but my parents barely acknowledged it because they were busy praising Jessica for a watercolor painting that her art teacher had complimented. That was the moment I first noticed the pattern that would define our family dynamic for years to come. My achievements were expected, hers were celebrated. Despite the unequal treatment, I excelled. I graduated as valedictorian and earned a full scholarship to Stanford, where I studied computer science. Even with the scholarship, college was expensive, so I worked 20 hours a week at the campus tech support desk while taking a full course load. I graduated with honors and immediately got accepted into a master's program. Graduate school was even more demanding, but I thrived on the challenge. I interned at tech companies during summer breaks and built a strong network in the industry. By the time I finished my master's degree, I had 3 job offers from major tech companies. I accepted a position as a junior software developer at TechSphere with a starting salary of $90,000. It was a solid offer, especially for someone fresh out of grad school. But in the expensive Seattle area, it wouldn't get me far right away. The student loans from my master's program were substantial. Between that and the astronomical housing costs in Seattle, I made what I thought was a practical decision. I'd move back home temporarily, maybe for 6 months, aggressively pay down my loans and save for a down payment on a place of my own. When I called my parents to discuss the idea, they seemed pleased. Mom even said she would prepare my old room, which had remained largely untouched since high school. What I didn't know was that Jessica had moved back home 2 years earlier after dropping out of community college. She had cycled through a series of retail and waitressing jobs, never keeping one for more than a few months, while pursuing her dream of becoming a professional photographer. I packed up my small apartment near campus, donated furniture I'd acquired during grad school, and drove home with high hopes for a fresh start. The Seattle skyline gleamed in the distance as I pulled into the familiar driveway, a sense of nostalgia and comfort washing over me. Home would be a launching pad for my adult life, or so I thought. That first night, Mom prepared a special dinner to welcome me back. The dining room table was set with the good china candles lit and a roast in the center that filled the house with a mouth-watering aroma. Dad uncorked a bottle of expensive Cabernet, and Jessica actually put her phone down long enough to help set the table. It felt like a celebration, and for a moment, I felt truly valued. Little did I know that this dinner wasn't just a homecoming. It was setting the stage for a painful lesson in family dynamics and financial independence that would change my life forever. We sat around the table that evening, glasses clinking, as Dad toasted my academic achievements and new job. Mom beamed with what appeared to be genuine pride, and even Jessica offered congratulations between texting her friends under the table. As we finished the main course, Dad cleared his throat in that way he always did before discussing business. "Sarah, now that you're home and starting your career, we should discuss arrangements," he said, his tone shifting from celebratory to businesslike. I nodded. Fork paused midair. "Of course. I was thinking I could contribute to groceries and help with utilities while I am saving up." It seemed like a reasonable offer to me. Dad exchanged glances with Mom before continuing. Actually, we're thinking something more substantial. You're a professional now, and professionals pay their way. Mom reached beside her chair and pulled out a folder she had apparently prepared in advance. We think $1,800 a month would be fair rent for your room and use of the common areas. I nearly choked on my wine. $1,800. That's more than my old apartment near campus. It's actually below market rate for this neighborhood, Mom replied, sliding what appeared to be an actual printed rental agreement across the table. I should know I sell homes here every day. I looked from Mom to Dad in disbelief, certain this had to be some kind of joke. But their expressions remained serious, expectant even. This doesn't make sense. I moved home to save money. At that rate, I'd be better off getting my own apartment. Dad folded his hands on the table. You make good money now, Sarah. This isn't about us profiting, it's about teaching financial responsibility. What about Jessica? I asked, turning to my sister, who suddenly seemed very interested in her mashed potatoes. Does she pay rent too? The uncomfortable silence that followed told me everything before Dad even spoke. Your sister's situation is different. She's still finding her path. She's been finding her path for 2 years while living here, I asked incredulously. Mom reached over to pat Jessica's hand. Jessica needs support right now while she builds her photography portfolio. You, on the other hand, are already successful. The double standard was breathtaking. Jessica, 23 years old, with no degree, working occasional gig jobs as a barista or retail associate, while pursuing photography, lived completely free of charge. Meanwhile, despite just finishing an expensive graduate program with student loans, was expected to pay premium rent to the very people who had raised me. I can't believe this, I said, setting my napkin on the table. You want me to subsidize this household while Jessica contributes nothing? Don't be dramatic, Dad said sharply. We're not asking you to subsidize anything. We're asking you to be a responsible adult. And Jessica isn't an adult, I countered. She's not ready, Mom said protectively. Some people take longer to find their way. Jessica finally spoke up. It's not my fault you chose a career path that actually pays well, she said with surprising defensiveness. Not everyone wants to be a corporate sellout. I bit my tongue to keep from saying something I'd regret. The conversation deteriorated from there, with my parents presenting their decision as non-negotiable. The rental agreement included stipulations about notice periods, restrictions on guests, and even kitchen privileges. It was more stringent than any lease had signed for actual apartments during college. That night I lay awake in my childhood bedroom, staring at the glow and the dark stars still stuck to my ceiling from middle school, and struggled with what to do. I could refuse, find an apartment, and stretch my budget thin. Or I could accept this unfair arrangement, swallow my pride, and use it as motivation to save even more aggressively than I'd planned. The next morning I signed the rental agreement, not because I thought it was fair, but because it ignited something in me, a determination to prove my worth and gain financial independence faster than anyone expected. If they saw me as nothing more than a tenant, then that's exactly how I'd behave, a temporary one with an escape plan. Life under my parents' roof quickly established a new rhythm, though not one I had ever imagined. Each month I wrote a check for $1,800 and left it on the kitchen counter in an envelope addressed to landlords. My small act of passive aggression went unnoticed, or at least unacknowledged. Beyond the substantial rent, I discovered additional expectations that hadn't been mentioned in our initial agreement. Mom casually mentioned that since I was the one with the good job, I should handle the grocery shopping for the week. Dad suggested that I could pitch in by mowing the lawn and taking care of yard work that he'd previously hired a service to do. Meanwhile, Jessica floated through the house like a privileged guest. She woke at noon most days, spent hours editing photos or scrolling through Instagram for inspiration, and frequently asked Mom for spending money for new camera equipment or photography workshops. Our parents not only funded these requests, but praised her dedication to her craft. One evening, I came home exhausted after a 12-hour workday to find Jessica and Mom looking through a catalog of art classes at the community college. This portfolio development course would be perfect, Mom was saying. It's $600, but I think it's worth the investment. Jessica beamed. Thanks, Mom. I think it would really help me develop my unique perspective. I dropped my laptop bag loudly on the counter. Must be nice to have your education funded. My student loans just hit my account today. First payment of $800 due next month. Mom looked up with a frown. Don't be bitter, Sarah. These classes are Jessica's equivalent of your college education. Except I paid for mine, I muttered, heading to my room before the conversation could escalate. Despite these frustrations, I was excelling at TechSphere. My team lead noticed my dedication and technical skills, assigning me to increasingly important projects. I worked longer hours than required, volunteered for challenging assignments, and made myself indispensable. 3 months into the job, I received my first performance bonus of $5,000. I told no one about the bonus. Instead, I opened a separate high-yield savings account and established automatic transfers of 50% of each paycheck directly into it. After paying rent to my parents' student loan payments and covering various household expenses, they kept adding to my responsibilities. I had little left for myself. I stopped buying new clothes, brought lunch to work every day, and found free activities for entertainment. On weekends, I started a side gig doing freelance web development. I would wake at 5 in the morning to avoid disruptions, work until everyone else was awake, and then continue late into the evening after dinner. The extra income wasn't substantial at first, but it grew steadily as I built a client base. The emotional toll of living under these conditions was harder to manage than the financial one. Each time I watched my parents casually hand Jessica spending money, or heard them praise her for the smallest accomplishment, the resentment deepened. I felt invisible, except when bills needed paying or chores needed doing. The breaking point nearly came during a family vacation to Lake Chelan. I'd assumed I wouldn't be joining given my work schedule and financial situation. But Mom insisted the whole family should go, just like old times. You can work remotely for a few days, can't you? She asked over dinner one night. I suppose, I replied cautiously. What's the plan? Your father found a lovely lakeside cabin for the 4th of July weekend, she said excitedly. 4 bedrooms, private dock, incredible views. Sounds expensive, I commented. Worth every penny for family memories, Dad replied. I nodded, waiting for the other shoe to drop. It didn't take long. Of course you'll need to cover your portion, Dad added casually. 800 for the weekend plus your share of food and activities. I set down my fork. Let me get this straight. I'm paying rent to live in a house I'm not staying in for the weekend, plus paying premium holiday rates to join a family vacation. That's how vacations work when you're an adult, Dad said firmly. And Jessica? I already knew the answer. Mom jumped in. Jessica will help with meal planning and activities. That's her contribution. The injustice burned, but something had shifted in me over these months of unfair treatment. Instead of exploding or retreating, I felt a cold resolve strengthening within me. Fine, I said simply. You'll pay my way, as always. That vacation became a microcosm of our family dynamic. I worked remotely from the deck each morning while Jessica slept in. I paid for jet ski rentals that everyone enjoyed. I covered my share of every meal while Jessica contributed by taking artistic photos of the sunset that Mom later framed for the living room. On the last night at the cabin while everyone else sat around the fire pit making s'mores, I excused myself for a walk along the shore. The moon reflected off the still water, and in that peaceful moment, I made a promise to myself. This situation was temporary. I would endure it, use it as motivation, and eventually create a life so independent and successful that no one, not even my own family, could make me feel less than again. Upon returning from the Lake Chelan trip, I realized I needed expert guidance to accelerate my financial independence plan. Through a women's networking event at work, I met Amanda Winters, a financial advisor who specialized in helping young professionals build wealth. Unlike the stuffy investment advisors my father worked with, Amanda was approachable, straightforward, and focused on practical strategies rather than abstract financial theory. The fact that you're paying that much in rent to your own parents is actually a blessing in disguise, Amanda said during our first consultation at a quiet coffee shop far from my parents' neighborhood. That's an unusual perspective, I replied skeptically. She smiled. It means you're already accustomed to living on less than you make, which is the first step to building wealth. Most people in your position would be stretching their budget with a nice apartment, new car, and lifestyle upgrades to celebrate their first professional job. Amanda reviewed my current savings income and expenses. She seemed impressed by my discipline, but suggested I could be more strategic. High-yield savings accounts are good for emergency funds, but with your savings rate and time horizon, you should consider more aggressive growth vehicles. She explained, sketching a diagram on her notepad. Over the next 2 hours, Amanda introduced me to investment concepts I had never considered. We discussed index funds with low expense ratios, tech sector ETFs that aligned with my professional knowledge, and even allocating a small percentage to cryptocurrency as a high-risk, high-reward option. The key is diversification and consistent contribution, she emphasized. Even in down markets, keep investing, especially in down markets. I left our meeting with a comprehensive investment plan and a strange sense of gratitude for my difficult living situation. The exorbitant rent had forced me to think creatively about money and seek professional advice I might have otherwise postponed for years. Within a month, I had opened a brokerage account, established a Roth IRA, and even purchased a small amount of Bitcoin and Ethereum. I tracked every investment meticulously, learning about market patterns, economic indicators, and technical analysis in my spare time. What began as necessity evolved into genuine interest. My initial investments performed modestly with some gains offset by market fluctuations. But as months passed and I consistently added to my positions, the compound growth became more apparent. A tech stock I had researched carefully doubled after a product breakthrough. My small cryptocurrency allocation tripled during a market surge. By the 5-month mark of living with my parents, my investment portfolio had grown from zero to just over $40,000. Combined with my aggressive saving and side gig income, I had accumulated nearly $80,000 despite paying almost $9,000 in rent to my parents during this time. I kept these financial developments completely secret from my family. At home, I maintained the appearance of just getting by, occasionally mentioning student loan stress or the high cost of living to reinforce their perception. I drove the same used Honda I'd had since college, wore the same clothes, and never mentioned my growing portfolio or side business. One Saturday morning, while sipping coffee at my favorite cafe and reviewing my investment dashboard, I ran into Michael Garrison, a high school classmate who had gone into real estate after college. "Sarah Taylor, no way!" he exclaimed, walking over to my table. "I heard you were back in town." After catching up on the usual post-college trajectories Michael mentioned, he had started working with a firm that specialized in foreclosure properties. "It's not as predatory as it sounds," he explained when he saw my expression. "We actually help homeowners in pre-foreclosure with options, and only when those are exhausted do we facilitate the property transfer. The goal is to get fair value for everyone involved." "Interesting," I replied, genuinely curious. "So you're seeing a lot of distressed properties, more than you'd expect in this market." Interest rates ticked up and some investors who were overextended had to liquidate. There are some incredible opportunities if you have capital and good credit. A week later, Michael texted me about a property that had just been listed in Cedar Park, a charming neighborhood about 20 minutes from downtown Seattle. The owners are underwater after a business failure. Bank is foreclosing, but they want a quick sale to avoid the formal process. It's priced 20% below market. I toured the house the next day. It was a 1970s Rambler with good bones needing cosmetic updates. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a sunken living room with a fireplace, and a backyard with mature apple and cherry trees. Despite the outdated kitchen and carpeting that had seen better days, I could immediately envision it transformed into a comfortable modern home. "What's the asking price?" I asked, trying to sound casual as we stood in the light-filled living room. "$345,000, Michael replied. "It's worth at least $420 in this condition, probably $475 with $20,000 in updates." I did quick mental calculations. Between my savings and investments, I had about $80,000. Significant, but not enough for a traditional down payment and renovations on a house in Seattle. "What's the catch?" I asked, suspicious of the below-market price. "They need to close in 3 weeks, all cash offer preferred. The owners are already in default and need to resolve this before formal foreclosure proceedings begin." An all-cash offer was impossible with my current assets, Or so I thought, until Michael explained a strategy involving a hard money loan as a bridge to conventional financing. It would be expensive in the short term, but could work with my strong credit and income. That evening, I ran financial projections until midnight. If I liquidated my investments, took a short-term bridge loan for the remainder, and then refinanced with a conventional mortgage once I owned the property, I could make it work. It would be tight and somewhat risky, but possible. Something else occurred to me as I considered this path. If I purchased a home, I wouldn't just be escaping the rent trap my parents had created. I would be achieving a major life milestone they never expected I could reach so young. The thought sent a small thrill of vindication through me. The next day, I submitted an all-cash offer of $335,000 with a 21-day closing period and minimal contingencies. By evening, Michael called to inform me it had been accepted. "Congratulations, homeowner," he said, the smile evident in his voice. "Let's get the inspection scheduled for tomorrow." I hung up the phone and sat in stunned silence in my bedroom. Through a combination of parental unfairness, financial discipline, strategic investing, and perhaps a bit of market luck, I was about to become a homeowner at 26 without a dime of family help, and despite paying nearly half my income in rent to my own parents. The inspection revealed only minor issues typical for a home of that age. The roof had been replaced 5 years earlier. The foundation was sound, and the electrical and plumbing systems were in good condition. The estimated repairs and updates totaled about $15,000, well within my projected budget. As the closing date approached, I maintained absolute secrecy about my plans. I continued paying rent, doing household chores, and playing my assigned role in the family dynamic. Inside, however, I was bursting with excitement about my imminent escape. The day I closed on the house was surreal. I sat in a sterile conference room at the title company, signing document after document until my hand cramped. When the notary finally said, "Congratulations, Ms. Taylor, you're officially a homeowner," I felt both elation and disbelief. I had a house, a whole house that belonged to me. No roommates, no parents charging exorbitant rent, no sister getting preferential treatment. Just my own space where I could create my own rules and build my own life. That evening, I decided to share my news with my family. I considered simply leaving a note and moving out while everyone was at work. But that felt cowardly. Instead, I stopped at an upscale grocery store and purchased ingredients for a special dinner similar to the one my parents had prepared when I'd moved back home. In the kitchen, I prepared rosemary, garlic, roast chicken truffle, mashed potatoes, and haricots verts with almond slivers, all my father's favorites. I set the table with the good china-lit candles and even picked up a bottle of expensive Cabernet, similar to the one he had opened to celebrate my homecoming. Jessica arrived home first, immediately suspicious of the elaborate dinner preparations. "What's the occasion?" she asked, eyeing the candles. "Just felt like cooking something nice," I replied casually. "Could you text Mom and Dad to make sure they'll be home for dinner? I'd hate for this to go to waste." When our parents arrived, Mom raised her eyebrows at the formal table setting. "This is a lovely surprise, Sarah. What are we celebrating?" "I thought we could have a nice family dinner," I said, bringing the platter of golden brown chicken to the table. "I've got some news to share." Throughout the meal, I maintained light conversation, asking about Dad's work and Mom's latest real estate listings. I complimented Jessica on her recent photography project, which had actually been quite good. I played the role of dutiful daughter perfectly, all while the keys to my new house sat heavy in my pocket. As I served the apple tart I'd made for dessert, Dad finally asked, "So what's this news you've been waiting to share?" I took a deep breath and served the last slice of tart. "I bought a house today," I said, my voice steady. "With cash." The silence that followed was absolute. 3 pairs of eyes stared at me in disbelief. Mom was the first to recover. "That's impossible," she said with a nervous laugh. "You can't possibly have saved enough for a down payment, let alone a cash purchase." $335,000, I replied, pulling out my phone and showing them pictures of my new home. "Cedar Park neighborhood, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. The keys are right here." I placed them on the table next to my water glass. Dad put his fork down with a clank. "Where did you get that kind of money? Did you borrow it?" "No loans involved," I said truthfully, omitting the bridge financing I'd arranged to make the all-cash offer. just careful saving and investing. On your salary while paying rent and student loans. His tone was accusatory, as if I must have done something underhanded. Are you dating some rich guy we don't know about? Mom asked, looking genuinely confused. No rich boyfriend, I replied. Just good financial planning. Jessica stared at the photos on my phone. It's actually really nice, she admitted. When do you move in? This weekend, I answered. I've already given notice at work that I'll be taking Friday off to move. Notice, Dad spluttered. What about notice to us? The rental agreement requires 30 days written notice. I smiled. Check section 3.2. Notice is required unless tenant purchases a primary residence, in which case 7 days is sufficient. I'll have my things out by Sunday and will pay prorated rent through then. I discovered that clause buried in the lengthy document my father had prepared, likely never imagining I'd be able to use it. This is how you repay us, Mom said, her voice rising. After everything we've done for you, you just spring this on us and leave. Everything you've done for me, I echoed in disbelief. You charged me $1,800 a month to live in my childhood bedroom, while letting Jessica stay for free. You had me buying groceries, doing yard work, and even paying my own way on family vacations. We were teaching you responsibility, Dad shouted, his face reddening. No, you were exploiting me, I said calmly. In the 6 months I've lived here, I've paid you exactly $10,800 in rent. During that same period, you've given Jessica approximately $4,000 for photography equipment and classes, according to the conversations I've overheard. That's different, Mom insisted. What Jessica needed was the same treatment you gave me, I interrupted. Real-world consequences for adult decisions. So you're just abandoning your family? Dad asked, his voice now laced with guilt rather than anger. Is money all that matters to you? The irony of his question nearly made me laugh. That's rich coming from you, Dad. Wasn't it you who told me that professionals pay their way? Well, this professional just bought her own house at 26 without any help from her family. In fact, despite the obstacles they put in her way. Jessica looked uncomfortable. I'm sorry they charged you rent when I don't have to pay, she said quietly. I didn't think it was fair either. Mom rounded on her. Don't you start too. This isn't about fairness. Sarah makes good money. You're still establishing yourself. I'm 3 years younger than her mom, not 13, Jessica replied, surprising me with her self-awareness. Maybe if you treated me more like an adult, I would act more like one. The conversation deteriorated from there. Dad accused me of being selfish and ungrateful. Mom alternated between guilt-tripping and expressing disbelief at my financial accomplishment. Jessica remained uncharacteristically quiet, watching the drama unfold with thoughtful eyes. When Dad finally thundered that I was choosing money over family, I stood up, gathering my keys and phone. I'm not choosing money over family. I'm choosing self-respect and independence. Thank you for dinner. I'll be back tomorrow to start packing my things. I walked out the front door to the soundtrack of my parents continuing to argue, my heart pounding, but my resolve stronger than ever. In the car, I sat for a moment in the darkened driveway, expecting to feel guilt or sadness. Instead, I felt something unexpected: freedom. The process of moving out happened faster than I'd anticipated. Friday morning, I rented a small moving truck and began loading my belongings. I'd accumulated surprisingly little during my 6-month stay. Minimal clothing, some books, my laptop and tech equipment, and a few personal mementos. Everything fit easily in the truck with room to spare. What I hadn't expected was the community that rallied around me. When I posted a simple status update on social media, bought my first house today, moving this weekend, my phone exploded with congratulatory messages and offers of help. By noon, 3 colleagues from work had shown up with coffee, donuts, and willing hands. My friend Alicia brought her pickup truck to help transport additional items. Even my cousin Taylor, who lived an hour away, drove in to assist. While we worked, my parents remained conspicuously absent. Mom had left early for a real estate showing, and Dad had mumbled something about a golf game before disappearing. Only Jessica awkwardly offered to help sorting through bathroom items we had shared and carefully separating them. I'm really happy for you, she said quietly as we packed toiletries, and maybe a little jealous. Of what? I asked, surprised by her honesty. Your independence, your confidence. She folded a towel meticulously. I think they meant to protect me, but they just made me dependent instead. It's not too late to change that, I replied, pausing my packing to look at her directly. You're talented, Jessica. Your photography really is good. You just need to believe in yourself enough to take risks. She nodded, blinking back unexpected tears. Maybe once you're gone, they'll realize they need to let me grow up too. By evening, my childhood bedroom was empty except for the furniture that had always been there. I paid the prorated rent in cash, leaving it on the kitchen counter, with a brief note confirming my departure. Then I followed the moving truck to my new home, where my friends had already ordered pizza and were waiting to help unload. That first night in my house was both exhilarating and terrifying. After everyone left, I wandered from room to room, the emptiness echoing around me. The carpet was outdated, the kitchen needed renovating, and the walls desperately required fresh paint. But it was mine. Every creaking floorboard and drafty window belonged to me. I slept on a mattress on the floor of the master bedroom, waking to sunlight streaming through blinds I could adjust any way I wanted. I made coffee in a kitchen where I set the rules. I cranked up music without worrying about disturbing anyone. Small freedoms that felt enormous after months of walking on eggshells in my parents' home. The blissful solitude lasted exactly 3 days before reality intruded in the form of text messages. First came Mom. Just checking you have enough groceries and toilet paper. I could drop some things by. I responded politely but firmly. I'm all set, thanks, fully stocked. Then came Dad more direct. Your mother is worried about you in that old house alone. The neighborhood has changed since we looked at houses there years ago. Translation. We still want to control your decisions. My response was brief. Home security system installed yesterday. Area has one of the lowest crime rates in the city according to recent statistics. I'm fine. The text continued over the following weeks, increasing in frequency and emotional manipulation. We miss you at Sunday dinner. The yard service asked about you. Your grandmother is visiting next month and expecting to see you. I maintained polite but distant responses, establishing boundaries with every interaction. When they showed up unannounced one Saturday morning while I was painting the living room, I greeted them cordially, but didn't invite them inside, explaining I was in the middle of a project. We drove all this way, Mom complained, trying to peer around me into the house. Next time, please call first, I said firmly. I'd be happy to have you over once the renovations are further along. So now we need an appointment to see our own daughter, Dad asked incredulously. Yes, I replied simply, just like any other adult would expect. They left in a huff, and the incident was followed by 3 days of silence before the text resumed now with added guilt. After all we've sacrificed for you, family should come first. We only want what's best for you. Jessica, meanwhile, took a different approach. Her texts were supportive and curious. How's the house coming along? Can I see your renovation progress? Got any hand-me-down furniture you don't need for your new place? 2 weeks after moving out, I invited her over for coffee. She arrived with a housewarming gift, a framed photograph she'd taken of Mount Rainier at sunrise, genuinely beautiful and professionally matted. This is incredible, I said, immediately envisioning it above the fireplace. I took a paid gig last week, she announced, as I gave her a tour of the half-painted, partially renovated rooms. Wedding photography, made $600 in 1 day. That's fantastic. I hugged her, genuinely proud. I haven't told Mom and Dad yet, she admitted. They'll probably say it's not a real job or something. Who cares what they say? How did it make you feel? She smiled a real smile that reached her eyes. Independent, capable, like maybe I could actually do this professionally. Our relationship, freed from the competitive dynamic our parents had created, began to heal. Jessica started visiting regularly, sometimes helping with renovation projects, other times just bringing takeout and watching renovation shows with me for inspiration. The situation with my parents came to a head at Thanksgiving. Grandmother had insisted we all gather at her house, a neutral location that made refusal difficult. I arrived bearing homemade cranberry sauce and pumpkin pie, prepared for tension, but determined to remain civil. The initial greetings were awkward but polite. Dad made stilted small talk about the Seahawks season, while Mom complimented my sweater, as if we'd seen each other yesterday. Jessica shot me encouraging glances across the room as we helped grandmother in the kitchen. The facade cracked during dinner when Aunt Denise innocently asked, "So, Sarah, how's that new house of yours coming along? What an accomplishment at your age." "It's coming along wonderfully," I replied. "Just finished renovating the main bathroom last weekend." "Such an undertaking for someone so young," grandmother added proudly. "And you did this all on your own." "Completely," I confirmed, "from saving the down payment to managing the renovations." Dad cleared his throat uncomfortably. She had advantages many young people don't. A high-paying tech job, living rent-free during college. Rent-free, I interrupted, unable to stop myself. "Dad, you charged me $1,800 a month to live in my old bedroom while Jessica stayed for free." The table went silent. Grandmother's fork paused midair. "James, you did what?" she asked my father, her voice dangerously quiet. "It wasn't like that," Mom jumped in. "We were teaching Sarah financial responsibility. She's always been the responsible one." "By charging your own child nearly $2,000 in rent after she finished graduate school?" Aunt Denise asked incredulously. "While her sister paid nothing, Jessica has different needs." Dad started to explain, but Jessica herself cut him off. "No, I don't," she said firmly. "I needed what Sarah got to be treated like an adult capable of standing on my own. Instead, you kept me dependent and babied me until I believed I couldn't survive without your support." The family dinner devolved into a full airing of grievances. Grandmother and my aunts were firmly on my side, expressing disbelief at my parents' behavior. Uncle Robert, who had remained silent until then, finally spoke up. "James, Linda, you failed both your daughters in different ways," he said gravely. "You burdened one with unreasonable expectations, while crippling the other with none at all." By dessert, Mom was teary, Dad was defensive, and the extended family had formed a protective circle around Jessica and me. Grandmother pulled me aside as I helped clear the dishes. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered, squeezing my hand. "Not just for the house, but for standing up for yourself. Your grandfather would have been proud too." I drove home that night to my half-renovated house, emotions swirling but ultimately settling into a sense of vindication. The family now knew the truth, and the overwhelming consensus had been support for my position. For the first time, I'd experienced what it felt like to have family truly on my side. After Thanksgiving, my parents' communication became less frequent. The few messages they sent were more respectful of boundaries, though still tinged with hurt. I maintained polite but distant responses, focusing instead on making my house a home and advancing in my career. Jessica, inspired by our conversation and the family support at Thanksgiving, found an affordable studio apartment and moved out of our parents' house in December. She took a part-time job at a photography studio to supplement her growing freelance business. We spoke almost daily, our relationship evolving into true sisterhood now that we were both establishing independence. 6 months after purchasing my house, the transformation was remarkable. The outdated carpet had been replaced with hardwood floors. The kitchen now featured white shaker cabinets, quartz countertops, and stainless steel appliances. Every room had been painted in warm, welcoming colors that reflected my personality. More important than the physical changes was the sense of true ownership and accomplishment. Each improvement represented a decision I had made independently, each repair a problem I had solved. The house had become a tangible manifestation of my capabilities, a daily reminder that I could rely on myself. Professionally, my trajectory continued upward. My dedication at TechSphere had been noticed, resulting in an early promotion to senior developer with a significant salary increase. I maintained my investment strategy, rebuilding the portfolio I liquidated for the house purchase and establishing new financial goals. One Sunday afternoon in early spring, as I planted a vegetable garden in my backyard, my phone rang with my father's number. We hadn't spoken directly since Thanksgiving, communicating only through occasional text messages. I considered letting it go to voicemail, but instead took a deep breath and answered, "Hello? Sarah." His voice sounded different somehow, less authoritative. "Your mother and I were wondering if you might be available for dinner next weekend. At a restaurant," he added quickly. "Neutral territory." The olive branch was unexpected. "I could do Saturday evening," I replied cautiously. "Excellent. There's a new place downtown she wants to try. I can text you the details." "That would be fine." An awkward pause followed. "How's the house?" he finally asked. "It's good, just putting in a vegetable garden today." "Your grandfather would approve. He always said homegrown tomatoes were the only ones worth eating." Another pause. "Would it be presumptuous to ask if we might see it someday? The renovations, I mean." The request surprised me. "Maybe. Not right away, but someday." "Fair enough," he conceded. "See you Saturday then." The dinner was predictably tense at first. We navigated safe topics like weather and local events, carefully avoiding any mention of money-family dynamics or the past 6 months of minimal contact. Finally, after our entrees arrived, Mom set down her fork. "We owe you an apology." She said the words seeming to cost her considerable effort. "The way we treated you when you moved home was wrong." Dad nodded, adding, "We've had some difficult conversations since Thanksgiving. With each other, with Jessica, even with a family counselor. Your grandmother insisted we see." "We're trying to understand where we went wrong," Mom continued. "With both of you, but in different ways." "Jessica tells us she's doing well," Dad said. "She says you've been supportive of her photography business." "She's talented," I replied simply. "She just needed confidence and practical guidance, not financial dependence." Mom looked down at her plate. "We thought we were preparing you for the real world by being tough on you, and protecting her by being lenient. Instead, we nearly lost you both." "It wasn't just the rent," I said, finally addressing the elephant in the room. "It was the double standard. The message that my achievements were expected while hers were exceptional. That I should pay my way while she received endless support." And Dad nodded slowly. "I see that now. I thought I was teaching you valuable lessons about self-reliance, but I was really just controlling you through money, the same way my father did to me." The conversation continued not easily, but with more honesty than we'd managed in years. They didn't fully understand or accept everything I said, but they were listening genuinely, listening perhaps for the first time. As we waited for dessert, Dad asked hesitantly, "Would you be willing to tell me how you managed it?" "The house purchase, I mean. From a professional standpoint, I'm impressed." For the first time, I shared the details of my financial strategy, the aggressive saving, strategic investments, the side gig income. I explained how their exorbitant rent had actually motivated me to become financially independent sooner than I might have otherwise. "You're a better financial planner than most professionals I know," he admitted, a hint of grudging respect in his voice. "I had a good teacher," I replied. "You taught me the value of saving and investing. You just didn't expect me to apply those lessons so effectively against your own unfairness." Mom reached across the table to touch my hand tentatively. "We're proud of you, Sarah. We should have said that more often." "Thank you," I said, accepting the touch briefly before withdrawing my hand. "That means something to hear." The relationship remained fragile, boundaries still necessary. I wasn't ready to welcome them into my home or life completely, but the dinner opened a door that had seemed permanently closed. Small steps toward healing began a text exchange about a financial news article that Dad thought might interest me, Mom, asking for my opinion on a paint color for their living room occasional family dinners that grew less tense over time. Jessica flourished in her new independence, building her photography business with determination and creativity I'd always known she possessed. We became not just sisters, but friends and allies supporting each other's growth, while understanding the complicated family dynamic that had shaped us both. 1 year after moving out of my parents' house, I hosted my first proper housewarming party. My renovations were complete, the garden in full bloom, and my home truly reflected the person it'd become. Friends from work, neighbors, extended family, and even Jessica attended. To my surprise, Jessica asked if she could bring our parents. "They're really trying, Sarah," she said. "Grandmother says they haven't missed a single therapy session." After consideration, I agreed. They arrived bearing a thoughtful housewarming gift, a set of quality garden tools, and a dwarf lemon tree for the backyard. "This is beautiful," Dad said, looking around at the transformation Eddie created. "You should be very proud." "I am," I replied, the simple statement containing years of hard-won self-worth. As I watched my parents tentatively interact with my friends and colleagues, I reflected on the journey of the past 18 months. The unfair rent that had initially seemed like an obstacle had ultimately been the catalyst for my accelerated path to independence. Their unequal treatment had pushed me to prove my worth not to them, but to myself. The painful experience had taught me lessons more valuable than any parental advice that self-worth comes from, within, not from others' approval. That financial independence provides choices conventional support might actually limit. That sometimes the greatest gift is the absence of help, forcing you to discover strengths you never knew you had. Looking around at my beautiful home filled with people who genuinely supported me, I felt a sense of peace. The wound of family favoritism would always be part of my story, but it no longer defined me. Instead, it had transformed into the foundation upon which it built a life of genuine independence and self-determined success. What would you do if your parents treated you unfairly compared to your siblings? Would you have handled it differently than I did? Let me know in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that family challenges can become stepping stones to unexpected success. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, sometimes the obstacles others place in your path become the very things that lead you to your strength.